Good afternoon, and welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Eureka Community Oversight on Police Practices Board. I, Dino Novello Chair, will be facilitating this meeting for board members and the public. I plan on adjourning our meeting by 5 p.m. today. So any items that are not discussed in this afternoon will be tabled for our next quarterly meeting in July. So I would like to start out by reading our land acknowledgement. The land that Eureka rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Jirojiji. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous people from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Eureka acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. I'll begin our meeting by calling roll. Executive Assistant Shannon Fazio, will you please call roll?
Board Member Latica?
Present.
Board Member Watson is absent. Board Member Ciarbolini?
Present.
Board Member Pardo?
Present.
Board Member Giventer?
Present.
And Board Member Torres?
Present.
And Board Chair Novello.
Present. I'd like to also introduce our staff that we have in attendance. We have Commander LaFrance here and City Manager Miles Slattery, and then also our Independent Police Auditor, Teresa Magula. So please rise as we say and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. I'm hoping everyone has had a chance to review the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Are there any changes that need to be made to the meeting minutes? Okay. If there's no changes, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Board Member Latica motions to approve the minutes. Board Member Giventer seconds the motion. So all those who are in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is public comment. This is a time for members of the public to comment on items not listed on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or apportionment thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the COPP may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Do I have any? I see no one here in chambers. No public individuals.
I see no one on Zoom.
And there's no one in Zoom. Okay. Old business. We have no old business on the agenda, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, to new business. So the first item under new business is COPP quarterly report. I would let Teresa, Independent Auditor Teresa Magula, please share on this report.
Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for having me. And Chair Novello, appreciate you calling this item. Wanted to start off by saying that, as usual, we are very grateful to the Eureka Police Department and all the personnel who help us on a regular basis to be able to compile this report by providing all the information to us very timely. In this quarter, we reviewed several cases. 4 of those are officially closed, and I'll be able to report out on those. In addition, I know that you have a presentation from Commander LaFrance with the department's annual report. So I want to be sure that I'm allowing for plenty of time for the department to share its good work in the past year. What we've done in the past is that I've just gone through our report, read out our case summaries, and answered any questions that board members might have related to a specific case that was closed. And I'll do that again if that is the board's preference, unless you'd like to move in a different direction this time.
I think that's fine if we just go through each case.
Okay, terrific. As I mentioned, we have 4 closed cases. The first of those is case 2418. In this case, a member of the public alleged that EPD officers violated his constitutional rights during 2 different encounters that he had with the police department. EPD initiated a preliminary inquiry. They framed several allegations related to violation of constitutional rights and reviewed all of the available evidence for both of the incidents in which this individual came into contact with PD. They found the allegations to be unfounded, but also noted performance improvements for the officers involved. That's one of the things that we really like to see in the course of these investigations. It's not simply looking to see whether the misconduct that's alleged occurred or did not occur, but it's also an opportunity to have command staff take a much closer look at these cases and identify perhaps areas where officers could have performed better. In this case, it was with respect to their own officer safety and the way that they had positioned themselves tactically during the course of the encounter with this individual. We found the investigation to be thorough and fair with respect to this incident.
Are there any questions from the board regarding this case? No? I think we're good with that one. How about case number 2419?
Perfect. This is a second complaint from the member of the public. This complainant alleged that an EPD officer discriminated against her husband and did not provide sufficient information when they cited him for driving with a suspended driver's license and towed their vehicle. In this one, EPD also framed a preliminary inquiry. They framed allegations related to harassment and treatment of the public, and they reviewed all of the available evidence. And we had a lot of back and forth with regard to this case, the different types of options that may be available to individuals who are stopped, and the types of responses that officers might choose. Ultimately, it's officers' discretion. And so the EPD found that the allegations in this particular case were unfounded. We, after a lot of dialogue, found that the investigation was thorough and fair, and we found that the outcomes were appropriate. We did raise a number of different questions, as I mentioned, related to what options might be available to members of community when this type of encounter occurs. And so EPD, was very open to sharing information about the types of different responses that they might choose. Ultimately, in this case, the vehicle was towed, but we did note that there was, some confusion with respect to how that all went down for these 2 particular individuals. And we advised that EPD acknowledge that misunderstanding in the closeout letter, which is the letter that the department sends out to the complainants, informing them that the complaint has been investigated and is now closed. Any questions with respect to that case?
Yes. Board Member Giventer.
Was the owner of the vehicle a resident and citizen of Eureka?
That's an excellent question, and I do not know the answer. I believe that both he and his spouse were, but I cannot confirm that definitively.
Would you comment and explain the footnote that's at the bottom of page 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was part of the conversation that we had, myself with Chief Stevens, related to this case. One of the things that I brought up was, hey, there was, in the course of the encounter, it was discovered that both the husband and the wife were registered owners of the vehicle. The husband, as I said in the summary, did have a suspended license, but it was unclear why the officers chose not to have the spouse come to the scene if she were able to and pick up the vehicle that evening instead of having it towed. There seemed to be a bit of confusion around whether or not the vehicle itself had been rendered a disabled vehicle. There was some talk back and forth with dispatch about that and so on. So it seemed like there was some confusion on the scene itself related to the possibility of this vehicle being operable, as well as the spouse's ability to pick up the vehicle that evening. So really just wanted to highlight here that there are options at times, and in this case, it seemed unclear why that option wasn't pursued, but there was certainly some information missing that may have provided more context for the officers responding.
I'd like to add a comment on this. This reminds me of an incident that occurred many years ago that I knew about when I was a resident of the city of Turlock. A friend of mine loaned the family vehicle to his daughter in order to pick up his granddaughter from a friend's house. She was late and was stopped by a motorcycle police officer speeding and issued an appropriate citation. But the vehicle was impounded, even though in the glove compartment was an appropriate and current registration and insurance information, and there was nothing the matter with the vehicle. That person protested to the city of Turlock's police department, but ran into an officious officer who refused to do anything with respect to returning the vehicle. The vehicle was subsequently impounded, as I said, there for approximately 30 days. It cost that friend of mine approximately $1,000 to get that vehicle out of impound. Right. In my opinion, in such circumstances, if there are no extenuating circumstances, and if the owner of the vehicle is a local resident, the option should be to contact the appropriate owner of the vehicle and have that vehicle give that person the opportunity to retrieve that vehicle on the spot, provided that it's parked in a safe position. I think in that particular instance, my friend and their relatives lost trust in that local police department, and to this day resent that treatment by that police department. I just offer that as a comment.
Appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this case from other board members? Board Member Latica?
Yeah, thank you, Auditor Magula. Are there best practices in other departments as far as contacting other registered owners or leaving the vehicle on the road for it to be picked up at a later time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it really does come down to officer discretion in these cases, and what on scene both officers and supervisors think is most appropriate. There's a whole, as you mentioned, at least 3 or 4 options as to what could be done in these cases. I don't know that there is a standard best practice because it is kind of circumstantial depending on a case-by-case basis. One of the things that I recalled as I was writing this up is in our previous quarter, we had a similar case with respect to officers stopping an individual who was intoxicated. In that case, because the vehicle was parked in a safe location and it had no other registered owners, and the individual cited kind of the challenges that would happen should the vehicle be towed, those officers determined that it was appropriate to leave the vehicle to be retrieved at a later time. So even within the department, it really does depend on the circumstances of the case, which kind of route the officers take.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Can you give us a summary of case number 2423?
So in this one, there was a member of the public who reported dissatisfaction with a dispatcher's response to a 911 call. You'll recall that the dispatchers are employees of the Eureka Police Department. In other jurisdictions, that's not the case. But here, because they are within that chain of command, the complaint went to the police department. There was a preliminary investigation, and they reviewed all of the available recordings. EPD contacted the complainant to discuss that call for service, and during the course of the conversation, the complainant ultimately was satisfied with the discussion and did not seek to file a formal complaint. In that case, EPD determined that this could be resolved by pulling a case number to acknowledge that the contact had been received and something had been done. And we found that to be appropriate in this particular case, given the complainant's request that no further action be taken.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any questions from the board regarding case number 2423? Seeing none, can we go to case number 2502?
Yeah, and this is the final case in this quarter's report, 2502. Again, member of the public. This individual alleged that he was falsely arrested and that an officer broke his cell phone. We also note here that the complainant filed a claim with the city of Eureka for money or damages related to the loss of the cell phone. EPD initiated a preliminary investigation, reviewed all of the available reports, recordings, and the claim information that was submitted to the city. The allegations related to the false arrest components were found to be exonerated, which means that there was no indication that there was a false arrest in this case. However, they did determine that the officer had lost the cell phone. They sustained that allegation, and EPD identified other areas for additional training in this case with respect to report writing. Things that they found did not rise to the level of formal misconduct, but required some corrective action. We found that the investigation was very thorough in this one and that those outcomes were fair and complete.
And just as a follow-up to that, that claim goes to our third-party adjuster. It was reviewed, got the information from EPD, and we did reimburse the individual for the phone.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the board about this case? I have a question. On the last paragraph, it says the investigator also noted challenges with the officer's report writing and investigative process.
Yes.
And I was wondering if either you or Commander LaFrance could share, like, what kind of training is involved with the report writing. I'm assuming that there's some level of training in the academy, but I'm just curious to know what kind of training happens internally as well.
I would defer that to Commander LaFrance. He's already up and at him. I would say before he makes a comment or responds that report writing is a challenge that jurisdictions nationwide are facing. We have kind of moved away, I think, as from a society from complete sentences and formal writing. And there are notable challenges in how that translates to formal report writing skills. And so it is something that we are seeing across the nation and in all jurisdictions where we're working, that officers, in particular newer generations of officers, are facing real challenges with the component of police work that's involved in kind of the administrative tasks, including report writing. And Commander LaFrance.
We'll start using AI going forward.
Yeah, she's being very, very kind in her statement right there about the current report writing. We are definitely seeing challenges with our newer officers coming out of the academy. But as for training, they go through one of the LDs, or the learning domains in the academy, is report writing. It really is teaching a very, very baseline of how to properly write facts. If you see a scenario, how do you put that into reports so now the reader understands what's going on, and then taking that summary and applying it to what laws are now being violated. And that's a challenge. Example for this investigation, we found that the officer, who was a newer officer, had struggles with the actual investigative process. So they mostly complete, but just the process of how they went about it, how an 18-year cop would do it compared to a 6 months cop. And that's where we have to look back and look at our training program besides the academy on the field training, how do we actually implement that? And we did look at that to make sure we actually have a template we use for a report for domestic violence incidents, and that's what, when I investigated them, was actually in the field, I'd actually have a sheet, and I'd go down the categories, exactly what I need to cover in my report, and then my report's actually templated. And so we actually require officers to write a template report for domestic violence because it's a very delicate report. And in this scenario, we work with the sergeant also to reiterate the use of the narrative, the template, and then also going over the report with them as well.
And are there any kind of, especially with this newer officer, are there any kind of review processes that happen, especially with people who haven't gotten the experience in writing them?
Yeah, so how it works is that the officer goes out, makes an arrest, or takes a case. They write the case. They get all, actually a pretty long process now with NIBRs and everything else with the check off and RIPA, and we have all these things we need to do now compared to when I started, which is just on paper with a pencil, and you could just write it out and you're done in 5 minutes and that's it. Now it's a longer process. So once that report goes through, the on-duty supervisor, sergeant, reviews it and approves it. Once that approval goes through, then we also go to the records for approval. And so, of course, we have the ability to audit. So if we do, we see reports that are problematic, like, for example, I will go through, look at them, find grammatical errors that are just so significant it shouldn't have been approved through. It could be anything from just a regular sentence construction to just lack of grammar to lack of content. And so we do review this as much as we possibly can. But there is definitely a process.
Okay. Well, cool. Thank you for describing that. I think a lot of people don't necessarily see that aspect of law enforcement, so thank you. Yes, Board Member Giventer.
Do they actually physically write, or do they dictate according to the template, or do they, or are they at a keyboard actually typing it into a computer?
Yeah, so our agency, we are still using keyboards. So we have RIMS as our RMS, or record management system. And so, yeah, they're typing out the report. Of course, we have our body cameras. So, example, if I was going to write a report, which is pretty rare to do nowadays, but it happens every couple times a year, I'll actually review my body camera. If I get a statement, this way I can summarize from my camera as I'm typing, I listen to it. It just definitely helps the process besides just our actual notepad being out. But yeah, they're actually typing the reports.
And they have that template at hand?
Yeah, within our system, so example for the domestic violence template is actually you hit a button in the actual narrative portion of our system for the report. It actually auto-populates the template right onto the page. And we have various templates for public intoxication, maybe for DUI now. We have a bunch of different templates that we use.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions regarding case 2502 from the board? All right. Seeing none, are there any members of the public here who wish to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none here in chamber, are there anyone in Zoom?
There's no one on Zoom.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to agenda item H2. Eureka Police Department complaint log, April 2025. Independent Auditor Magula, can you please just give us an update on this?
Thumbnail sketch. Essentially, this is the document where we are actively tracking all of the complaints that are being received and their status. You will see that in the first quarter of 2025, there were about 5 or 6 complaints that were submitted. Some of these are being completed with great velocity, so you'll see that one of them that was submitted in January was already closed out and reported out here. So the department is really moving swiftly through these. Others that are taking slightly longer, we're just keeping tabs on the statute of limitations to make sure that that is not expired and that the department can take action on those.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board regarding the complaint investigation log? Seeing none, are there any members of the public here in chamber who wish to comment on complaint and investigation log? Seeing none, are there any in Zoom?
There's no one on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move to the next agenda item, which is a Eureka Police Department and recommendation log. Independent Auditor Magula, can you please share us on this?
Sure. In this one, as I noted right at the top here, there were no new recommendations added as of our last report. And so these are the recommendations that have been suggested to the police department. We have worked with them, and almost all of these are accepted, and they have been either completed or in some form of being completed currently. And I update that every quarter.
All right. Is there anybody here, any board members have any questions regarding the recommendation log? No? I just would like to say, I'd just like to commend you, and seeing all the work that you're doing on paper is incredible. So thank you for that. Any members of the public here who wish to comment on the recommendations log? Seeing none here in chambers, is there anybody in Zoom?
I see no one on Zoom.
Okay. So let's move to the next agenda item, which is the RIPA audit. Now, is it going to be?
Before we move on, Board Chair Novello, could we have a motion and a second on the three OIR reports, please?
Sure. I'll entertain a motion to approve the 3 reports that we just reviewed.
I'll move to approve the reports stated today.
Board Member Chair Bellini makes a motion. Do I hear?
Second that.
Board Member Torres seconds. So all those who are in favor of approving the reports, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any oppose? Any abstain? Motion passes. All right. So the next item is a RIPA audit. Now is Independent Auditor Magula, is that going to be you that's going to be reporting that, or is that City Manager?
This was brought up at the last meeting, I believe, by board member Giventer, requesting the racial profiling audit for the department, and we just want to get direction from the board as to what you guys want that to look like for the IPA to follow up on.
Well, if I may comment on that, as Officer LaFrance just brought up, following every contact with the public, a police officer is required to go through a fairly extensive questionnaire, approximately 20 questions as I recall, according to state law, that documents the contact. This is compiled by the state and published, I believe for every police jurisdiction. But it's of little use unless there's some comparison, either to some expected standard or frequency of interaction, or comparison to demographics of the community, or comparison to general practices of police departments of comparable size. So I was asking, my question earlier was, is this appropriate for us to ask the OIR group to take this state data and maybe provide us with that type of comparison? And I just pose that as a question for our consideration.
And for discussion from the board, what are people's thoughts on that? Yes, Board Member Pardo.
Question for the OIR group. Have you done this before? And is this something that is common to do?
Yes. So OIR Group has conducted reviews of RIPA data in various permutations for several of the jurisdictions where we are the independent police auditor. In some jurisdictions, and most specifically, it was the city of Santa Monica that requested this report. It was looking to see if the department was accurately reporting its RIPA data, and understanding whether its own internal methodologies for assessing its data were accurate and sound. The other piece that we did for the Santa Monica Police Department was determine through this kind of mini audit of body-worn camera footage whether the RIPA statistics that were being reported by officers were accurate. So based on our review of body-worn camera, were the related RIPA data entries correct? So we were checking both for methodology and sound kind of statistical analysis, as well as the accuracy of their data. We've done this report for the city of Burbank. In Burbank, we did a deeper dive. They have an extensive process for verification of their own RIPA data internally. So there it was not so much the checks and balances of whether their data was accurately inputted, but rather an understanding of were the different policing methodologies that we were seeing appropriate? Were they aligned with best practices? In specific, we were taking a look at the concept of the pretext stop. So when officers are stopping for what appears to be a minor traffic violation, but it tends to turn into a larger investigation. So we were looking for those to see if those types of stops were resulting in a disproportionate or unfair treatment of certain portions of the community. The audit could take form, any form that the board desires. Really what's important at the onset is to understand what question or questions you seek to have answers to. So is the question, is the Eureka Police Department making stops in a disproportionate way within your community? That's one question that could be potentially answered. There are a lot of mitigating factors and compounding variables that make that question really difficult to answer, but certainly we could take a dive into that. There are questions perhaps around the outcomes of the stop. That's another piece of information that RIPA collects. So assuming that the stop is appropriate on its face for a traffic violation, what happens after? That to me is a more interesting space to look, in particular if you are looking for disproportionate types of treatment. And you're seeking an answer to that question. What happens as a result of a traffic stop? And then as Board Member Gaventer raised, there's the question of comparison across similar jurisdictions of similar size and location, geographic in California. Those are interesting comparisons to make, but certainly every jurisdiction has its own kind of challenges and policies, and it makes straight comparisons more challenging as well. But what I would advise the board is think of the types of questions that you might be seeking answers to, and then we can tailor an audit to potentially look at providing some of those answers for the board and for community.
Board Member Latica.
I guess this question would be for the city manager as far as the budget for this type of audit, and what would the city be willing to invest in?
Well, as a part of our agreement with the OIR group, we do have audits built into that, and Teresa gives screaming deals. I think we'll be just fine with any direction that the board wants to go with this.
Okay. Any Board Member Pardo?
Just wondered if Commander LaFrance has anything to add to this discussion?
Yeah, I think she hit it on the head, nail on the head with it's a complicated issue. So I've seen the when RIPA first started, it was started here and it kind of blossomed into something else. And so they finally added a checkbox where do you know the race or gender of the individual before you stop them? So actually, we're actually getting better data. But this also includes not just self-initiated activity, but also if I go to call for service, that's also required for us to do. So I'm not sure, there's probably a way to filter that data out, but just recognize that this giant database includes self-initiated activity and then also calls for service that we respond to. So it's not as clean as some people want it to be.
Okay. Board Member Giventer?
I would suggest an initial audit, but try to narrow this down. I'd be interested in a initial comparison of Eureka Police Department to our fellow police departments within the county, in particular a comparison between Eureka Police Department and the Sheriff's Department.
Is is that something that we can get, given that we are requesting information from another department, from another agency?
So the RIPA data theoretically is presented and made public. So every agency is meant to submit its data, and the Department of Justice is meant to publish that data. My challenge with using another jurisdiction's data set is that data sets are notoriously incomplete or inaccurate. So my challenge with comparing, say, to the sheriff's office next door is that we would have to start with the assumption that their data set is complete and accurate, and that's one that I'm not quite comfortable landing on. Just given that, no fault of their own, I have no interaction or basis to know whether or not their data set is complete and accurate, nor do I have a way of verifying that. So for me, my preference would be to stay internal to the Eureka Police Department and assess its practices and performance internally, as well as how it relates with the community, rather than doing comparisons, because I can't verify the veracity of their data sets.
Board Member Chair Bellini?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to say, I think that's way beyond our scope of involving other agencies or using their data in comparison to our data. It would provoke them to respond to whatever report comes back to whatever reporting agency that they might have. And I think our scope is very limited to the Eureka Police Department and what is happening there. I would also question how, when you say it's accessible, this is all a public database. So I'm just wondering how much time would be involved with the people at the police department for having to collect even more data than they're already having to do with, our regular process here.
Yeah, absolutely. And this would be the case, the increased request for information from the department is something that unfortunately is triggered every time we do an audit. And so to their credit, they are very organized, thanks to Commander LaFrance, and are obviously tasked, and they're with providing body-worn camera footage or police reports and so on of any cases that we might audit. So certainly this does increase the level of work. I could access the RIPA data set that's publicly available, but would want to make sure that that's verified through the department, and absolutely would require some hand-holding and heavy lifting on their part.
And I'd just add to that and reiterate what Teresa had said, that, any of these audits that are part of our agreement are something that do take extra time, whether it was the mental health audit that we did, or even the review of the Cal Poly case. That is going to be the case, but that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Board Member Torres, you had a question or comment?
I was just wondering, based on your statement about the Sheriff's Department, then there's an assumption you're saying that the data that Eureka Police Department has is complete and accurate. And I'm wondering, is that what you're confirming by saying that? Also, I'm just curious, just in your general opinion, is it valuable to do a report like that on a regular basis, like semi-annually or annually?
Yeah, so one of the components that I would be looking at first and foremost would be to verify the accuracy of the data set. So I would want to speak with, it was most likely Commander LaFrance, because he wears a million hats, about kind of the integrity of the data, what checks and balances they have internally to ensure that RIPA reports are being submitted. That would be kind of the first part of the audit, to confirm that the data set is complete. So I am not starting with the assumption that the data set is complete. I would have to verify that. With respect to would that be something that's appropriate on a semi-annual or annual basis, it is certainly something that I can't confirm for the Eureka Police Department, but I can confirm that other jurisdictions where we work are doing a more regular check and balance and audits, similar to how they would audit whether body-worn camera has been activated appropriately. They do random assessments of whether or not RIPA reports have been submitted. And I think Commander LaFrance could speak to that, if not today, then at a future meeting related to how they do that internally.
Okay. Now, moving forward in terms of providing direction, I am wondering if we want to give this some time for us to think about this, and then maybe we can come back to for our next quarterly meeting in July with a couple of topics that, if we're interested in, we could suggest to the independent auditor group, and then in our July meeting we can narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 different things as to what kind of reports we would want.
Mm-hmm.
What are people's thoughts on that?
I think, Chairperson Novello, that sounds very reasonable. I don't think there's an urgency to this audit. I don't think there's something prompting us, something going on in the community prompting us. So I do think taking our time and making sure this audit generates the information that we want and is a benefit to the group and the community and the department as a whole. So I like that approach.
Okay, Board Member Torres?
I was just thinking about, in the vein of what Board Member Chair Bellini said, I would love a report that would tell me how often EPD does those internal checks on their own to make sure that's happening. Because to me, sticking it to what we have, the information we have locally, I would like to know if they're supposed to do it regularly, that they're doing it regularly. So for me, that would be important.
Okay. So it sounds like, do we need to make a motion, or do we just take a poll?
It's fine. If we're going to bring it back, we'll just add it to the next agenda item under old business and bring up the conversation again.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you. All right. The next agenda item is for board member reports. Are there any board members that have any reports to share? Yes, Board Member Giventer.
2 years ago, almost to the day, Brothers Widmark went on a rampage through the city of Eureka. It started one morning as they strong-armed robbed a pedestrian at the Broadway Mall. In fleeing that incident, they hit and injured another pedestrian. Later that day, they were spotted in the Cutton area by sheriff's deputies. A pursuit ensued. They fled at high speed northbound on Dolbear, collided with a civilian vehicle at the intersection of Dolbear and Harris Street, resulting in injuries to civilians. They fired a rifle at the first pursuing deputy. Deputy soon arrived on the scene and proceeded to engage in them with gunfire. I raised this because the brothers were put on trial this last February and March. The trial lasted 7 weeks. I was a member of the jury. This last week, the brothers were sentenced to long terms in prison. Now, I raise this because during the trial, I learned a lot about the tangential and supportive role of the Eureka Police Department. That morning, members of the Eureka Police Department, with their body cameras on, accurately took reports and aided the victims of the robbery and of the hit and run. Later on, EPD dispatchers accurately relayed a be on the lookout alert and was received by the sheriff's deputies. Later that day, as the sheriff's deputies spotted the vehicle, a member of our care team was in one of the vehicles in a ride-along capacity. After the crash, that person exited the vehicle and assisted a woman and her child to safety, bravely doing that while gunfire was occurring. Still later that day, members of the EPD crime scene investigation team secured evidence, documented the scene, and played an important role in providing that evidence to subsequent prosecution. Still later that day, Chief Stevens appeared on the scene and assumed command and instituted the critical incident protocol for the county. Throughout the trials, we learned about this. I was very proud and pleased about the competency and the performance of members of our police department that day and later on through the trial as they testified and provided evidence. I had the opportunity during voir dire to explain the role of oversight and the importance of that to a police department, and that's on record now in the Superior Court. So I report that to you simply because I think that the competency of the Eureka Police Department personnel and the bravery of our one member of their care team that day, I just wanted to make note of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Giventer. Any other board member reports? Board Member Torres?
I'd just like to mention that I happened to attend a meeting this week dealing with Eureka and homelessness, and in my capacity in my job, and I appreciate seeing that even though it was Commander LaFrance, I appreciate seeing that there was someone present to show that EPD is concerned about that. They're present, they work with people. So I appreciated that. He was a participatory member of that meeting and shared his insights, which was helpful. And I appreciate that, you know, it's at times I suppose EPD seems like they're out on their own, but it's appreciated when they show up and give opinions and they support other local agencies that are trying to be out there helping people. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Board Member Torres. I think I would like to follow up because this is also an opportunity where we could suggest agenda items for future meetings. I'm just wondering what the board thinks if we bring back an agenda item where we invite the outreach group to provide us a report, like I'm thinking like the MIST program and how they collaborate with EPD. And I don't know what other board members think is like if maybe we can have a report done on that.
So just for clarification, currently we don't. MIST is not.
Oh,
we
sorry.
don't have a MIST
I may
officer
have.
anymore.
I'm thinking about the
Yeah.
the outreach that works with the
Yeah.
CSET. That's the other. Yeah.
Okay,
CSET.
with CSET and what they do with, the dining facility and those type of partnerships, and with DHHS and those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I meant to say CSET. So what are other people's thoughts? If maybe we could take a poll, if thumbs up, if you think it should be brought back for a future agenda item. Okay. Everyone has thumbs up on that. All right. Any other board member reports? Board Member Pardo.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to go back to our last meeting where we had the flock camera presentation. My takeaway from that meeting, and maybe I misread the room, was that we were generally supportive of the flock cameras. So I was quite surprised when it went back to council and it was unanimously rejected. And like all things in life, when you learn about something, you start paying attention. And I had not known much about flock cameras until our presentation. And sort of serendipitously, in March, there was an article in the Red-Headed Black Belt, and it said, "Vehicle stolen from Eureka, recovered after flock system alerts Ukiah police." And so, to me, that was sort of a ironic article that, we had presentation on the flock cameras. We had decided that, I certainly understand the city council was a very challenging job, that the flock cameras, were not for Eureka this time, but it was sort of funny that we had a car that was stolen here and Ukiah recovered it using the flock system. So I decided to look into this a little bit more, just, trying to figure out, is this flock camera something that's going to be part of the future eventually here, or is this something that is really just a temporary thing in the police world? And so I reached out to our former police chief Mills, who I was appointed to his advisory board, gosh, seems several years ago now. And I asked what his opinion was on the flock cameras. Chief Mills was actually quite surprised that we had not approved it up here in Eureka. He states that not only is Palm Springs using the flock license plate recognition, but they're also in the process of getting flock video cameras, which is a newer technology. He stated that there was a recent incident at Coachella, a music festival, where there was a bomb threat, and the flock license plate recognition was able to identify the person who had called in the bomb threat, and they made a high-risk stop and were able to apprehend that suspect. And he also stated it had played a role in murders and kidnappings. So obviously it sounds like the flock camera system, has the potential to be a real game changer. And so, as I said, I don't disagree with the council. I wasn't there at the meeting. I commend Chair Member Sarah Bellini, who was there. I saw in the article, and
it's on Zoom.
Yes, on Zoom. So I commend you for that. But as I said, I certainly understand the privacy concerns. But I do think this is an item I would like to see this board, at some point revisit. As I said, after talking to Chief Mills, it's apparent to me that this is a real game changer, this technology. And I know that maybe Commander LaFrance could comment. There was a recent carjacking incident here in Eureka, and I can't help but think that the flock camera could have played a role in apprehending those suspects. So I understand that this privacy issue is a big issue, but I do think that we should continue to follow along with the flock camera, monitor the privacy issues, make sure that it, the concerns don't happen. I know there's concerns that the privacy can be violated, but for any of us who carry one of these days, I don't think we can say that privacy is not at risk. Our cell phones are full of data that puts all of us at privacy risk. So, but yeah, I do think, as he said, I started noticing, and that was just one article. The Red-Headed Black Belts had at least two others where the flock camera in Ukiah and other areas has allowed these license to be recognized and a high-risk stop to be initiated. And also I see that we did have a high-risk vehicle stop issue bought by the ORI group we didn't quite review it, and I don't know if that's something that we can review next time.
Okay.
Because I think the flock cameras play into this situation as well. So I just hope, as he said, that at some point we can revisit this issue. I don't know if that's 6 months from now, a year from now, because I do think this technology really sounds like it has the ability to make our community much safer. And I think most importantly, I think this technology enables our officers to stay out of very high-risk situations. I think it allows them to initiate a high-risk stop with confirmation, and that's what you want. You don't want to suddenly have a unexpected encounter that quickly changes into a very high-risk situation. We've seen those happen to Eureka. So it's something I do feel strongly about, and I hope that we're able as a board to at some point revisit this issue.
So just as a follow-up, if the board ever wants a report on flock cameras or anything like that, of course we're able to do that. One opportunity that the board could have with this, if it's the board's choosing, would annual reports. All of our boards and commissions give annual reports to the council, and if you guys chose to incorporate that into your annual report, that would be possible. But if you ever need report on flock or anything, we can do that for the board too.
So just for clarification, a report could be generated on exactly what regarding flock cameras?
I'm not suggesting specific to that. I'm just saying that each of our boards annually provide a report, whether it's, Open Space Parks and Rec, Planning Commission Design Review. They're all given annual reports. As a part of that report, that could be presented to council. I'm not saying it needs to be specific to that.
Okay. So, just Board Member Pardo, so it sounds like you just want to revisit the flock camera at a future date?
Yes, I think that.
Okay.
I think that would be the best approach. I don't know if 6 months from now would be the time, but I think there's so many departments using it now. As you said, Ukiah, with Palm Springs, San Francisco, Oakland, it should be easy for us to gather some data. And I think the big concern was privacy. I certainly understand that, and I can understand the council. These are very difficult decisions they face. But I do think it's worth, given there's so much data being generated, to follow up and just see, to see what's happening. And because I do think it will allow our department, which has always stretched, an additional resource that allows a safer community, at least in my opinion, and more importantly, puts our officers in a much safer situation.
Okay. Now, can I take a poll from the board members regarding if they would like to see a flock camera agenda item in the future? Okay. We all agree on that. Any other board member reports that we
Go next.
Okay. Board Member Chair Bellini.
I can't pass up the opportunity to follow up with Dr. Pardo's comments. I 100% agree. And sadly, I was the only person that made public comment in support of the flock cameras during that city council meeting. And there was nobody in chambers or anybody on Zoom. I think I got booed. I wasn't there personally, but, not well received at that meeting. Nonetheless, I think some of the city council members seem to see the benefit of the flock cameras, but were very much swayed by the public comment and some of the other strong opinions of the council members who were just really ingrained in this privacy issue, which, I say put that aside and let's, use the tools that we have available to us to stop these crimes and to keep our officers safe. So I am 100% on board. And I don't know when our annual audit is scheduled to happen, but in accordance with our bylaws, I believe we're at least supposed to write a report and present it at the council. Is that how it works?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that can be to your choosing. We could set up a routine date that works for you guys and just do that annually. It's up to you.
Yeah, so maybe in July we could talk about that process of maybe selecting a subcommittee that would actually write or put together the report for the rest of the for the rest of us to review before we make a presentation, and get that scheduled, because I think we did one. I remember doing one some time ago, but not in the last year. So I think we're a little overdue. So we could put that on the agenda for July. That'd be great.
Well, I know Board Member Giventer and Torres worked on a review, and
that was for the IPA.
oh, IPA, sorry.
That's correct. That's a review of OIR, and
my bad. Sorry.
And that's in a draft. Maybe we'll have an opportunity a couple of minutes from now to discuss the status of that.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up in my report, and we knew that it was ready, and because of the shortening of this meeting, we pushed it off to July for that to be presented.
Okay, thank you.
And so you're, just to be clear, you're suggesting we talk about a potential report to the city council, is that correct?
Yeah, see, our bylaws require that we do an annual report
Okay.
to the city council. So I'm suggesting that we talk about that in more detail in July and, set up a schedule and appoint a subcommittee to actually write the report.
Yeah, and I'd recommend that as a part of that, you can do the flock cameras, whatever you want to put in there, but also include the final report on the audit of the IPA as a part of that report to council too.
So can we take a poll regarding, to bring this back to the July quarterly meeting? All those favors, thumbs up? Unanimous approval. Any other board member reports? No? Okay. We talked about future agenda. Nope, sorry. Next thing is police chief reports. Sorry, I'm moving ahead. Commander LaFrance. Didn't get off that easy.
Perfect. All right. I'm glad you have the 5 o'clock setting because I have to be somewhere at 6, so that's good. So, okay. So this is the annual report from the police department. The chief apologized he couldn't be here, but he took off some much needed time off, which is good. And Commander Urbang is down in the Sierra conference this week with Sergeant Omi. So we'll jump through this fairly quickly. You all should have a copy of this as well, and I'll literally work through this report. So this is our mission statement we developed a couple years ago when Chief Jarvis is here at the very end of his term here. Our mission is to work in partnership with the community, prevent and reduce crime, safeguard public trust, improve the quality of life, and protect the future of Eureka through dedicated professional service. So we actually had a work group came together, 5 or 6 of us within the department. I led a whole different scenario of how we go through and actually create a mission plan and a vision. So that's what we came up with, and it really it gives us what we do here at EPD. That's one of our older photos there, but that's most of the folks that are still here with us and working, including our canines. And this is our organizational chart from last year. The one big difference is, as of January 1st, I switched over to patrol operations. So I'm now in charge of patrol, and Commander Urbang switched over to investigations and special teams. And we will have those rotations until we are told otherwise. So we swapped out, which is not unusual for agencies to switch commanders or captains around to cover a different side of the house. I won't read Chief Stevens' message or the commander messages to you either, but those are located in there. You can read them at a later time. They are interesting. If you didn't know, this is the area coverage that we have for the city of Eureka. The red, everything inside the red is what we cover. And then we actually have 4 beats in Eureka. We have beat 1, the north end of the city. Beat 2 is the southwest corner. And then beat 3, where I used to work a lot of patrol with my dog, is located in the southeast corner. And then we have a walking beat out of Old Town, which is covered by by CSET's Old Town officer. So 3 different beats, and then technically 4 with Old Town. And those have been in existence, the parameters, since I've worked here, I believe, so almost 18 years. And this commonly based on calls to service in those areas. And I have no idea when they were last updated, but they appear to be correct. Commander Urbang, again, he was the patrol commander last year, and he swapped over to cover investigations and special teams, which includes CSET as of January. When we look at patrol really is the heartbeat of what we do. We have all these different investigation units. We have CSET, but really when it comes down to when someone calls into dispatch, they're expecting some type of response from the police department, and that's where our patrol officers are responding. Patrol typically, the minimal staffing is a sergeant plus 4 officers. We're trying to staff at 1 plus 5 officers, so we have a couple extra rovers that can back on in the city, and we're still working a 12.5-hour shift as of currently, and last year we're working those the 12.5 hours. The goal for next year is to get away from that, obviously, with improved staffing, and 12.5s It creates a lot of burnout and a lot of overtime that's unnecessary. So 2 years ago, we switched over to NIBRS. I believe this was reported out a couple years ago. I was here with then the records manager, O'Neill. She presented this. But we switched over to NIBRS, so now we're comparing oranges to oranges. In the past, we didn't have NIBRS, so it was hard to really look at crime rates. But as you see, we saw a very, very slight increase on crimes against persons from 23 to 24, a drop 12% crimes against property, so breaking into cars, houses, which is always good to see a decrease. And then we saw a decrease in crimes against society. An example of that would be drunken public, so public intoxication. And this itself could be a whole presentation for a couple hours, I'm sure. Probably wouldn't be interesting, but we could do it. Or a real long PowerPoint. All right, so our crime stats from last year. So in total, our patrol calls, almost 58,000 are officer initiated. That means officers actually going out there and doing proactive police work is almost 15,800. Total cases we took was 5,300, and then traffic stops is 2,400, or almost 2,500. Interestingly enough, this year we made some shifts, me coming to patrol. We've actually already hit 90% of our traffic stops from last year. So we are out there doing proactive work. It's being recognized. I had a very nice message today left on my voicemail thanking us for doing traffic enforcement on I Street and H Street. And so we actually get a lot of positive comments about traffic enforcement, because traffic in the city is not good. Drivers are pretty tough here, and I grew up on the East Coast, New York, and it's pretty rough here. But we are seeing definitely a significant increase in traffic stops and a reduction in collisions. So there's a direct correlation. So our total collisions last year is 315. Our arrests, you can see those there. Obviously, our misdemeanors are going to be commonly the most out of 1705, and then felony for adults. And then juveniles, we don't book a lot of juveniles into juvenile hall, partially because juvenile hall won't take them. So if it's a felony, they usually will, but it has to be a fairly violent felony. So it's definitely a tough course if we have a kid that's doing very, very poorly in society, has some really bad behavior. Getting him to a secure, safe facility for them and for the community can be challenging. Our field officer training program. So in the past, last year, we got a bunch of people through our field training. We currently have one individual going through the program who's hopefully going to be done soon. But we have a whole array of full-time field training officers and then auxiliary. So besides the actual field training officers training individuals in the field, they're also acting as a watch commander. So if the sergeant is vacant for the day, they will fill that spot. So they really play two different roles. The primary role is a trainer. Secondary role is being a watch commander for that shift, which is a challenging role because you're making decisions on various calls, including towing vehicles. So our CSOs, our community service officers, these are our non-sworn officers in the field. These are a lifeline for officers. They do a ton of work for them. When we look at data for what percent of the time these officers are actually assigned to a call, CSOs are commonly 50% of the time is actually assigned to a call, and then a good portion is also for reports. So they definitely handle a lot of calls, and the officers greatly appreciate them. Animal control, we handled about 1,500 calls last year. We took about almost 300 animals to the shelter last year, and apparently goats is actually a serious problem in the city with 21 goat calls. So I don't think I've ever been on a goat call, been on a horse call before, but not a goat call. So yeah, but they stay very busy in the city. There's always loose dogs. There's aggressive dogs, dog bites. There's a lot to do. Besides people, we also have animals. So we currently have 4 canine teams. Currently, last year, they were all trained in narcotics and on apprehension. We shifted most of the patrol dogs. So think pointy ear dogs, they are now just patrol. We removed the narcotics portion of it. Just it's not necessary. And we have 1 narcotics dog. And we've definitely, compared to last year, we've seen our numbers go up as well for deployments. It kind of helps having both commanders, former canine handlers, that we definitely want to get our dogs being used appropriately and successfully. And it's definitely a needed program. That's me. You can read about me later. So the community safety and I actually had a better picture before, but we had to take it out. It was, yeah. It was actually a really good picture before, but we moved it. So CSET, this again is our specialized team that's focusing on homelessness, mental illness, addiction, and trauma. They do a variety of things. They also help cover patrol. I always say they're social workers with guns. That's really what the intent is. That sometimes we need the law enforcement component, but we also need the people that are able to connect with folks and get them to services. So last year, about 223 referrals to various services of many kinds. They only wrote 10 total holds last year, and we'll talk about that in a second. But overall, they had a 98% diversion rate. So when CSEC goes on a mental health call for service, they're diverting 98% away from mental health hold. And we'll talk about that in a separate slide coming up. But we track a lot of their data as well. They handled about a third of all mental health calls for the city, which we handled 1,471 mental health calls last year, and also in 2023, same number, which is weird. But they handled about a third of those calls. And they partner a lot with the county, either through behavioral health or other aspects of the county to assist them. And they work hand in hand with our care team. Trash removal, again, 100,000 pounds of trash. That's pretty standard nowadays. Since I was running CSET, we had run the same thing. You pick up a lot of trash. We have a whole process for going through, and if we have an encampment, that gets tagged, and we get a fair amount of voluntary compliance for people to actually pick up their stuff on their own. We supply them with supplies, garbage bags, services, whatever else. But we have the team historically has had a very high percentage for folks that are voluntary complying to remove their items. All right, here's I told someone if you could sum up my career in the past 7 years in this slide, this is it. So we've been tracking 5150 holds and mental health calls really since 2020, since CSEC came into fruition back in 18. We have some data back then, but it's not very good. 2020 really kicked off our data. So 5150 holds are important for the city because they overwhelm our ERs. They overwhelm the EDs. It's been a mess for years. I work with Providence on this. I work with behavioral health on this. I meet with them every 2 weeks. And we have gone from 302 holds 2020 to 105 last year. So we're diverting about 93% on patrol away from going to the hospital. That doesn't mean that we're just, moving the individual. It's actually either doing a proper evaluation for 5150 to keep them out of the ER and connect with services, or we're looking at it and saying, hey, do they want assistance? Where do I bring it from here? And so instead of overwhelming the ER with them, we are finding better routes for them to go. By diverting them. But a lot of it is our officers, and we have a specific training program that we do with care for officers for evaluations to keep people out of the EDs, because it is a mess sometimes.
And so just to be clear, in order to get somebody into temporary environments, they do have to go through a medical review. So they go to the ER first before they go there. So that's why it's so impactful on the ER.
Yeah, but again, our calls are increasing for mental health calls, but our holds are decreasing. So that's a good dynamic. Our SRO has been very busy this year, and the beginning of, last mid-August, so that would have been last year. We had a lot of various school threats going on, and he dealt with them with class and with professionalism, and it was very challenging. But our SRO is a godsend, and the schools are very, very thankful we have them in there, because they not only handle law enforcement issues, but also helping families out, working with kids that are kind of going down the wrong path and kind of redirecting them, which is definitely needed. It's good to have that mentor also in the school systems. Our criminal investigations team, they are very, very busy. Any kind of high-level crime, violent crime, sexual assaults, there's a ton of homicides they are involved in, and they have a whole team of detectives. We have a forensic analyst who has a master's in forensic science, probably the smartest person in our department. But it's amazing the work they do, and they're able to solve crimes pretty efficiently, and they have a pretty good closeout rate for the most part. If you look at on the left side here, I won't read them, but these folks, there's some bad folks in that mix that commit some pretty heinous crimes, and unfortunately, they need to be, in my opinion, locked away for a while. If you look at the second one down, Maria Cuevas, she was the individual who killed a pedestrian on I and 10th Street last year. And they did an outstanding investigation, and she got 25 years for that. She was doing whippets while driving and killed a pedestrian trying to walk across the street. So unacceptable. And missing persons, they've actually been closing out some historical cases as well with that. Property, apparently we have stuff there from 1946 still. We have a lot of property. If you ever go up to our property room at EPD, if you ever do a tour, there's a lot of pieces of evidence. About 5,000 pieces per year, 10 terabytes, which apparently is a lot for digital evidence. And then it's just massive amount of property we have. And we have a couple different locations that we store property. So for things like homicides, we have to store those for life. Can't get rid of them. For certain crimes, we keep those forever. Abatement. This is primarily one individual, Deb. She is very active out there addressing cars that either are unsafe, they're a hazard, they've been dumped somewhere, and so she works on, we have a whole process through tagging the vehicles, and then if the vehicles aren't addressed or moved, they can get towed. So last year she did about 300 tows, 16 were actually stolen vehicles, and then she tagged almost 1,000. So again, about 30% or about 70% voluntary compliance rate, which is good. We do have members of the department on negotiations team. That includes our MIST officer, Officer Clark, with CSET, and then Jacob Rosen, our managing mental health clinician, is also on CNT, even though most members of CSET are trained negotiators as well. We have a couple individuals also on our SWAT team. One is one of our agents with DTF, and then we also have a member of CSET who also works with SWAT. Dispatchers, we actually probably should add more now because we have a bunch of officers helping in dispatch as well. But that's where they are right now. They work 12-hour shifts. If you ever get a chance to tour, again, it's a lot of phone calls going on, a lot of radio traffic. I'm not sure how they keep up with it because it's overwhelming with 3 screens and the phone doesn't stop unless it's like 3 in the morning. So total calls for service for police-wise is about 58,000. Calls into 911 calls about almost 29,000, and then ingoing, outgoing actual calls is about 83,000. And they're doing a very good job on answering 911 in less than 10 seconds, which is 98.74%, which apparently far exceeds the national average. So they're doing very, very well, despite the staffing challenges we have with them. Records is equally as busy. They are really the folks behind the scenes that most people don't ever see. However, they work the front desk, so citizens do have contact with them. But they take care of all of our reports on the back end, sending stuff to the DA's office, making sure our citations are correct, making sure the reports are correct, making sure all of our system, everything in RIMS is up to date and working. They really make sure that our officers are on the paperwork side of things are being done correctly. And for us, we want to make sure we have that accountability. And so Christina Larimore is our manager back there, and she's been phenomenal to work with for all of us, and really has that operation working very, very well. And we greatly appreciate our records folks back there. Complaint review. I know we just went over this a little bit ago, but so we had about 173,000 contacts at EPD last year. We had 25 complete overall complaints, which is 0.010, et cetera, % of interactions. We don't get many complaints. Considering how many people we contact, complaints are pretty low. We had 18 internal complaints. Again, almost more than double the complaints were internal while we activated ourselves as command staff, and then 7 were external. All external complaints were either unfounded or not sustained. So all the 7. We have a couple analysts that work for us besides a forensic. We have the police operations analyst, so Jackie Takaraboulos. She works as our training manager. She coordinates all trainings. We actually send officers to a fair amount of training. I'd like to think our agency is probably the highest trained in the county, just the amount of training we spend, hours, and then also we look at our budget-wise. The city definitely supports our people going to trainings. So she's very, very active in finding training, sending people for trainings, and then coordinating where they're going to stay at. If we get more than one person going, how's that going to work out? She's absolutely phenomenal in doing that. And there's a lot of requirements by the state to get things done. She also assists with our background hiring. So it's not just we recruit people, we hire them. There's a whole long process, and so she helps with that as well. So in 2024, a couple milestones. We hit about a little more than 4,000 hours of training. We implemented LEFTA, which is the law enforcement training application. In the past, when I was a field training officer, I would do all of my daily reports of my trainee on paper. I'd circle a little 1 through 7. I'd circle them. I'd write it by hand or maybe on the computer. But nowadays, they have an awesome application they can use that makes it very, very efficient. We also implemented a training record system. So no longer do we have paper to fill out for a training application. They go onto a system. They fill it out, it gets sent over to me, I approve it or deny it, and then it moves on from there. So it's definitely streamlined it. And then we created a sleeping quarters upstairs in one of our storage areas. It's not fancy, but when you work graveyards and you have shift at, or you have a watch, or if you have court at 10:15 in the morning and you get off at 7 and you don't want to drive to Fortuna or somewhere else home, it's a place to sleep. So it's definitely a necessary thing that we need. And even other agencies, they have actually like sleeping cabins, larger agencies. Our other analyst is Rachel Solom. She handles all of our budgets. And so she not only just the overall budget, looking at the budget, analyzing the budget, but also works on grants. So we have a wide variety of grants that we've done last year as well, which helps support our operations and gets us equipment and also training. We have an ABC, or alcohol beverage control grant every year as well. We did 57 operations last year. We booked 13, cited 7, and this is anything from a minor decoy sting to shoulder tap. We do undercover for retail thefts. There's various things that we do. That's constantly ongoing. And we have traffic OTS, Office of Traffic Safety, as well, a grant, and that works on everything from training officers on DUI for impairment all the way to actually having DUI checkpoints, and then also having traffic enforcement operations. It could be focused on speeding, it could be focused on cell phones, distracted drivers, a wide variety of things we can use that for, and officers can sign up for that. We have a small reserve program. The gentleman on the very bottom, Chandler Baird, now works for us as a CSET ranger. But the other two, Mike Stephen and Eddie Wilson, Eddie Wilson's a sergeant. They both do our backgrounds for us, and we work with them very closely on the recruiting end of things. Our volunteers are absolutely outstanding. They logged over 650 hours. They do so many things. I was responsible for making the slide, or at least getting the information for it. We ran out of space because they do so many things for us. Everything from just walking in certain areas in town to riding around and looking for people parking disabled parking slots, which is a very expensive fine of $353, to vehicle abatement and many other things. So we're beyond thankful for our volunteers for all that they do for us. We have one of the best peer support teams in Northern California. We take our officer wellness very seriously. Besides family restoration that we contract for culturally competent clinicians, we also have a team of peer support that work with our officers that are having a tough time or just need someone to talk to. And these folks can also not only listen, but also refer them to appropriate resources as well internally. And this has really been an important part of our of the department for us. We have a slew of new employees. These are just part of them. We have a lot more new folks we just hired on recently, but we hired a lot of folks last year, including 5, 6, 7 officers. Some going to the academy, some are brand new, and some are laterals. We actually got 2 gentlemen from East Coast, one from Virginia. One was a former cop in Turlock. I actually met him in grad school. He went to Arkansas as a mental health cop, and then once he wanted to come back to California, so I'm like, come on back over to California. So he's Michael Shaw. We added him from lots of experience. So we have some very good quality applicants and officers coming through. And Jack Cole came to us from the sheriff's office. So we had some very, very high talented people, which we desperately want to have very, very quality people. Recruitment's it's ever ongoing. We're actually looking pretty good. Right now we have, if you look at the numbers, we have I think 7 vacancies technically for sworn officers, but we have 4 in the academy and we have 4 additional in backgrounds. And that's not including the assistant chief position. So our recruitment efforts over the past couple of years has been very, very successful. We opened up our community service officers position, I think last couple weeks ago. That's been a tough one to fill, and dispatch has been the toughest. I think they have 3 to 5 to fill their spots. But recruitment is, you're going to lose folks, you're going to gain folks. People will lateral to different agencies, and it's just how it works. It's challenging, but again, the past couple of years, we've seen a major increase in our abilities to recruit, and we've also streamlined the process to get hired here and made it fairly seamless for the most part. I can take any questions.
Is there any questions for Commander LaFrance? Yes, Board Member Chair Bellini.
About the animal control situation. So I think the chief said something about recently hiring a new person. So there's somebody out there now filling that spot.
Correct. Yeah, she Carly Land. She's in training right now, so she's been in training for the past month. It's probably a 3 to 5 month training program because you have to learn also not only how to do the community service officer job, but also the animal control job. So it's a little bit more challenging. And she just completed our crisis intervention training last week with
good.
7 other people from the
And
city.
so what's the situation with when you take an animal to the shelter? Is there a contract with the county, between an MOU or something between the city and the county? How's that work?
There is a contract. We pay them
Way too much.
$250,000 a year, I think it is. I think it's $250. Okay, for animal services, for us to drop animals off up there.
Whether you take them or not?
Yeah, it's a lump sum and it's expensive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Board Member Pardo.
Commander Francis, is this shared with the community, or how is this distributed, this report?
So it was presented to council
About 2 months ago, I
about
think.
2 months ago. I'm not sure if where we've posted it at.
It's on the website.
On the website. Yeah, I commend you. I certainly like your last page acknowledgements. I think it's very kind of the police team to acknowledge the city of Eureka and the city council and the other organizations. Certainly a very professional presentation. So I commend the department, and very, very thorough, which I think is important, and having that transparency for the community to see all the different data and reports and what the department is doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to agree. Great report. I was just wondering if maybe on the meeting minutes, if we could put a link to this report, so then like that, if people review this at a later time, they would have access to it a little easier. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Commander LaFrance. All right. So the next agenda item is for staff reports.
Yeah, so I will have 2 things. Like, I wanted to reiterate that the OIR evaluation is in draft form. It'll come back to you guys next meeting for action. And what's agendized here tonight is the Humboldt Equity Consortium. The city of Eureka put together a group of local government agencies as well as local community groups as a part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. What staff would like is for for a subcommittee, 2 of you, to go and present on the COPP board to the consortium and let them know that what you guys do, and also to encourage collaboration with EPD, with some of the groups on there. Black Humboldt, NAACP, Equity Arcata, Centro del Pueblo participates sometimes, but those are the groups that we're trying to get more participation and more interaction with our police force. And so staff's hoping that 2 of you could get together and maybe present to the Equity Consortium, encouraging participation not only in our meetings here, as we have an agenda item that's always agendized on our, for their participation, but also any sort of input on how they could have more interaction with EPD would be great. The meeting is on May 7th at 2:30 at the Adorney Center. And so if there's a way that you guys could nominate 2 of you to get together and prepare a little presentation for them, it would be great.
No, so it sounds like this is a one-time meeting, but possibly other opportunities for the future, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, they meet monthly. And so, yeah, whatever comes of it would be great, but mainly wanting to get those groups to participate, not only in the oversight board, but also just in collaboration with EPD would be great.
Okay. Is there anyone on this board interested in participating in this meeting? I mean, I personally wouldn't mind being. Sorry, I thought you were suggesting me, but sorry, board member Giventer.
I think it's important that our chair be there.
Yeah.
Chairperson Novello, if you could make it, I think that would be a good representation, and certainly Chairperson Giventer has been very engaged.
Board Member Giventer?
Sure, I'd like to work with you on that.
Okay. So is everybody okay if Board Member Giventer and we work on this?
Absolutely.
All right. Everybody seems to agree. All right. Any other?
Nope, and thank you. And I meant to say good afternoon, board chair and board members.
Well, now we say farewell. Meeting adjourned.
I have one question for Miles. In the previous meeting, we, at the suggestion of the OIR group, brought up a liaison between this board and any critical incident response that would occur. But it was left, it was unclear at that meeting, and still unclear of exactly what the nature of that liaison would be.
So I'll need to speak with Teresa on that, and then when we have our agenda review, we can bring that up with Dino and bring something back for you guys.
Yeah, so we'll have an update for our next meeting. Thank you all.